This Alpine market town was once part of the Habsburg Empire, later part of Bavaria, and much later home to the Winter Olympics. Willkommen in Innsbruck. Curious Traveler is made possible by the following.
At Regent Seven Seas Cruises, we believe that personal space is essential to the luxury travel experience. With no more than 732 guests, our ships allow you to explore the world and discover the freedom of having space at sea.
Over 300 tours across all 7 continents. Over 40 years of serving travelers. You can experience effortless fun vacations and authentic experiences with Get. GetTours.com.
Windstar Cruises. Intimate, private, yacht-style cruises to the Mediterranean, Caribbean, Tahiti, and more. We look forward to seeing you on board. WindstarCruises.com.
When you travel with us, you are not the typical tourist.
Charming doesn't even begin to describe this historic Austrian city, with its golden roof, its snowy white mountain peaks, and its multicolored Old Town. Willkommen in Innsbruck. Innsbruck is the capital of the state of Tyrol in western Austria and is nestled within the majestic Alps. It began as a small Bavarian market town and later became part of the mighty Habsburg Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So, why was this location so important? Well, because Innsbruck was an important crossroads between the trade routes to Italy, Germany, Switzerland, and the rest of Western Europe. And all that trade happened over a very important bridge, as we will soon see. So, here's what I'm curious about in Innsbruck. Who lived here because she wasn't allowed to live here? And who required that all these rooms be pink? What was this copper-capped balcony built for? Where can you find Luftelmalerei? And some snow-loving peacocks. Why are there floating sculptures on this mountain? And why are all these window shutters red and white striped? When did some giants move out of this palace to make way for Marie Antoinette? And how are you going to convince yourself to ride in this crazy thing?
Nice knowing you. Bye-bye!
Who, what, where, why, when, and how. So much to be curious about in Innsbruck, Austria. We begin our curious journey into Innsbruck, where it began along the Inn River. This is a very important spot for 2 reasons. These beautiful, colorful buildings behind me are part of a neighborhood called Maria Hilf, and that means Mary Helps, and it's named after a church in the area dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Now over here, you will see a bridge, which is also important to Innsbruck, because Innsbruck means bridge over the River Inn. That's right, that's where we get the name Innsbruck, from the Inn River and Brücke, meaning bridge. And that bridge led travelers into a medieval gate within a medieval wall. There are still a few spots where you can make out where that wall once stood, which we will explore soon. But first, we explore what is within those walls. Innsbruck's historic Old Town, or Altstadt, a fairy tale town full of narrow, winding cobblestone streets, in between medieval houses, former guild halls, and simple merchant shops, with those ornate iron shop signs hanging overhead enticing you to come shop inside. There are lots of lovely little arcades and 2 clock towers, one where soldiers used to keep watch, and the other, all dressed up in pink, used to call the townspeople to church. Many, many colors brighten up the old town, and often there are murals on the outside of the buildings, a Bavarian and Austrian tradition called Luftelmalerei. And the building that really takes the cake looks like a cake. This is the Helbling House. It looks like a multi-layered wedding cake, right? Well, the Helbling House dates back to the 15th century, but all this Baroque Rococo splendor happened in the early 18th century, when the owners decided to attract some attention with these overflowing flowers, garlands, and a sprinkle of happy little cherubs. And attract it does. The beauty and the bright colors continue down Maria Theresienstrasse, named for Austrian Empress Maria Theresa. Built 700 years ago, today's shops used to be palaces and mansions of the upper class, who simply wanted to live outside the city walls. Today, it is a wide-open, beautiful shopping street with plenty of Luftelmalerei to enjoy. Now we turn back around to get the best view of the symbol of this curious and colorful city. With its 2,657 individual tiles, the famous Golden Roof of Innsbruck has been overlooking the old town for more than 500 years. Why something so ornate for a medieval town? Well, quite simply because the royal family used to live here, and Emperor Maximilian I wanted to impress everyone who came into his town. And impress it did. And wouldn't you know it, the Golden Roof has some wonderful curiosities. Look closely at the reliefs along the top. In the center is Maximilian with his 2 wives. Both marriages expanded his empire. The Habsburgs did that a lot with their marriages. But what I'm really curious about are these guys. Are these medieval break dancers? These are actually Morisca or Morris dancers, basically the court jesters or entertainers of their time. Seriously, how flexible is this guy? Next, just a few steps away from the Golden Roof is another curious remnant of the original town, which also happens to be a tasty one. Once upon a time, a medieval city wall encircled all of Innsbruck, and this tower is the only part that remains and dates back to 1180. Today, you can still enjoy it, but in a slightly different way. It has a restaurant that serves authentic Austrian cuisine. The darling Ottoberg restaurant is inside this once mighty tower of the medieval wall and directly overlooks our Innsbruck Bridge. But what I'm really curious about are these red and white striped window shutters. You'll see them all over Austria. Why? Well, one theory is that they symbolize the Austrian flag. How cute is that? Now, let's head back inside the tower for lunch. Just look at this fairy tale cottage-style interior. Wooden beams overhead, those hand-carved chairs with proud eagles and little knights, all sitting at attention around little tables all dressed up in white. And on our table is the traditional Austrian dish of Tafelspitz, a favorite of Emperor Franz Joseph. And Tafelspitz must be eaten in a certain way. And if you do it wrong, a true Austrian might even help you out. All this darling tradition framed with some wispy white curtains over lovely little windows, with possibly the best view over darling Old Town. Next, we stroll back through Old Town under the Golden Roof and to this grand archway to find the glorious, magnificent Hofburg Palace. The palace is where the Austrian royal family once lived and was built in the exact same spot as the original medieval city wall. The Imperial Palace was completed under Emperor Maximilian I, but around 250 years later, when Maria Theresa saw it, believe it or not, she said, "This place needs a makeover," and that's exactly what she did. She redid the palace in the Viennese late Baroque style, and perhaps the most opulent of the rooms is this one, called the Giant's Hall. Now, it's called the Giant's Hall because back under Emperor Maximilian I, we had beautiful paintings and statues of Greek and Roman gods. But of course, when Maria Theresa came around, she changed it completely. So today we have these beautiful panels of each of her 16 children.
And those Habsburg children grew up to become very important figures in European history. Two became Holy Roman Emperors, Joseph II and Leopold II. Maria Carolina became the Queen of Naples and Sicily, but perhaps the most famous is Marie Antoinette of Let Them Eat Cake fame. On the ceiling of Giant's Hall is a giant fresco called The Glorification of the Union of the Houses of Habsburg and Lorraine. Maria Theresa was a Habsburg, and her beloved husband Francis was a member of the Lorraine dynasty. You'd be smiling like this too if you had an empire as big as the Habsburgs. Through the many beautiful Baroque staterooms of Hofburg, we find a blue room and a green room and a pink room. Actually, pink rooms plural. All for Empress Elizabeth, most beloved by the people, sort of the Princess Diana of the 1800s. She was known affectionately as Sisi.
A very special part of the palace are these apartments. These were Sisi's apartments. Now, Sisi was married to Emperor Franz Joseph and was much loved among the people. She was known for her beauty, her fashion sense, and her extra long hair. In fact, this beautiful room, all decked out in pink silk, was her dressing room. So on this chaise right here, it's possible that's where she laid to have her hair done for 3 hours. Here's the funny part, though. With all these beautiful, lavish apartments just for her, she only visited the palace 4 times.
Well, yeah, of course one needs this room and this room and this room for 4 visits. 1 room for each visit, I guess. Next, we go from the splendor of Sisi's rooms to another part of the palace. And we also go back in time, to the years of Maria Theresa and her beloved husband Francis. And this room is no longer just a room, because this was where Francis I died in 1765.
Maria Theresa had this chapel built on that same spot in his honor. Now, the chapel doesn't host regular service or mass throughout the year, except for 1 day a year, that same day that Francis I passed. A mass is held here in his honor.
Maria Theresa never got over the loss of her husband. His funeral was held here in the Giant's Hall. And Maria Theresa even founded a Damenstift in his honor. A Damenstift is a noble ladies' foundation, sort of a secular convent where the women prayed for Francis several times a day. Believe it or not, that Damenstift still exists today. And there is one more grand gesture to mark the Empress's mourning. This giant Roman-inspired triumphal arch located in a busy Innsbruck intersection. One side is dedicated to Francis and the other to the wedding of their son Leopold, because Francis died during Leopold's wedding celebrations. Fittingly, the arch marks the end of Maria Theresian Street. And guess what? It was made out of one of those old medieval gates. How curious. Next, we go from the official royal palace of Hofburg to another royal residence, which was built for a very curious reason. So it's up a mountain we go to Ambras Castle. There was once a medieval castle here, home to counts and princes of Tyrol and Bavaria. But this modern version, if you can call the 16th century modern, was home to Archduke Ferdinand II. And today it is home to a couple of happy peacocks who don't seem to mind the snow. Archduke Ferdinand was known for spreading Renaissance culture throughout the empire. And that Renaissance influence can be seen in the beauty of Ambras Castle. And look, there's that tradition of those red and white striped shutters again, symbolizing the Austrian flag. There's also art everywhere here, from the sculptured gardens to the famous Spanish Hall. Which is where we meet our new friend and Innsbruck expert, Monica Grassmeyer. Her family has lived in Innsbruck for many generations.
As soon as I came in, I said, oh my goodness, it looks like 1,000 wooden carved doors that are stuck up on the ceiling. So what is it about the puzzle pieces that make it hard
because there's not one nail in the ceiling.
No nails?
No, all the pieces stick together.
Wow.
But we don't know which was the last piece they put. And if you don't know it, we can't renovate it. And it's difficult because when you put it out, everything is falling down.
Right.
Therefore,
so what we see now has never been renovated?
never.
The Spanish Hall was designed to host grand balls and parties with fine portraits of the leaders of Tyrol from the year 800 through 1550, forever greeting guests and, of course, giving the impression of power here in Innsbruck.
How important was Tyrol and Innsbruck in this time period?
In this time, it was the most important place of Europe. Innsbruck was the residential town. Here the Kaiser was living. He was the treasure of the German Empire. He was the largest collection of armor. This town, city Innsbruck, was the center of Europe, more important than London and Vienna and Paris and so on.
That's amazing.
So now we get to the curious reason why this version of Ambras Castle was built. It was all for Ferdinand's beloved wife, Philippine. Why? Well, there was a little bit of juicy gossip about them back in the 1500s. Ferdinand's father was the Holy Roman Emperor and didn't approve of Philippine, saying she was of low birth and low status. So she wasn't allowed to live in the official royal palace, the Hofburg. But the good news is that Ferdinand told them all to buzz off and lived a blissful life with his sweetheart here in Ambras Castle. In fact, there is a curious room here in the castle where they love to spend time together, in their high-tech spa. Well, high-tech for the 16th century.
We are in a very interesting part of the castle. So we've seen some grand spaces. A bathroom may not seem so grand in modern times, but when this was built, this was really advanced technology.
Oh yes, it was. It was, because it wasn't custom, no one had it. And this was clever. Here they had a fire, and that stones in the fire.
Okay.
When the stones were hot, they put it here in the water.
Okay.
And it was a steam bath. And the couple, the archduke, was sitting here with his wife, like a modern couple, just a steam bath.
So they'd sit, so that's kind of like our modern day sauna, but nobody had one of those.
Private sauna for them, the steam bath.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so from the sauna, we get to go in another chamber. So let's go through here. And we'll go through, and I love how we have to go through a little labyrinth here. And then in this room, what was this room
Here they
for?
got dressed. Here they got dressed. And if you put in the fire, it keeps warm all day long. It stores the heat.
So this is a furnace, and it's heated by the same elements we saw in the other room.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. And I have to ask you, in this room, the first thing I see are all these beautiful frescoes at the top. Was that meant to mimic like the ancient Roman baths?
Yes, the Roman baths, because everyone spoke of it. But then they didn't like the Roman baths because illness spread always. And they thought you get ill when you wash yourself.
Which isn't true.
But that was the reason why people didn't wash themselves in middle age, because they thought you get ill when you wash yourself.
Right, and then of course they got even more ill because they weren't washing themselves. And we have one last room here. This one might be my favorite. I love that the doorways are short, just like us. Okay, so this looks like the greatest bathtub on the planet.
The water's coming from the other room.
Okay.
And they were sitting down here.
So this is the size of a small pool. This was their bathtub.
This was their bathtub.
Really?
Yeah, they were sitting together, either with the husband or with the girlfriends. When he wasn't here, because he was in the battlefield, he was sitting here with the girlfriends.
Oh, okay. Oh, her girlfriends. I thought you meant his. Okay, never mind. Sorry. Her friends. And then if they're up at this level, you have this beautiful view out through all the grounds out there.
Next, those snowy Alps are calling, so we go from the heat of a Renaissance sauna back out into the winter wonderland of Innsbruck. Innsbruck is world famous for its skiing and ski resorts. It has hosted multiple Winter Olympics, and look, no matter where you go, just count to 10, and you'll see another skier, and another skier, and another skier carrying their skis to and fro. Yep, I'd say skiing is pretty popular around here. So in 1906, a wonderful way to get from the historic city center up to the mountains to go skiing was built, and its name is a tricky one. This is the Hungerberg Bahn. It takes you up to the top of Nordkette Mountain, but you're going to want to hold on. It gets pretty steep. Whoosh, you go from city to Alpine wonderland in just a few minutes. Nordkette Mountain is part of Austria's largest conservation area, the Karwendel Nature Park. The park is one of Europe's oldest nature reserves, established in 1928. What a way to experience it, just as the snow is falling down, with 360-degree views here from inside the cable car.
But the Hungerberg funicular isn't just a fun way to get up the side of the mountain. These stations are works of art. The modern architectural design was inspired by natural ice formations, and it's called Shell and Shadow. The architect was Zaha Hadid, who was the very first woman ever to receive the Pritzker Architecture Award.
British architect Zaha Hadid designed 4 of these artsy cable car stations, each a different expression of the Alpine landscape here in Tyrol. Her mesmerizing, weightless, futuristic designs are internationally recognized. She also designed Innsbruck's famous Bergesel ski jump, which mimics the slope of the mountain, reaching up to the sky. But for the history of how the original cable cars were built way up here, there is the nearby Cable Railway Museum, built inside a former wooden schoolhouse. These vintage photos take you back to the 1930s, complete with the stereoscope panorama of the surrounding mountains. The engineering marvel that is the cable car, that has been integral to the skiing heritage of Innsbruck, is fantastic. But you also have to appreciate those vintage après-ski clothing styles and poses, right? For our final stop, we're staying up in the mountains, but instead of doing some skiing, we participate in another age-old Alpine tradition. A tradition, I think, begun by someone who wanted to get down the mountain in the scariest way possible.
In 1976, Innsbruck hosted the Winter Olympic Games. The best of the best from around the world all came here to compete in all manner of winter sports like skiing and skating and bobsledding, which brings us to this unique racetrack behind me. This is the actual bobsleigh run that the Olympians used, and today anybody can try it. Lucky for me.
So, we've all ridden a sleigh down a little hill when we were children, right? But who in the world invented this rocket ship on ice called the bobsled or bobsleigh? Well, it all started in the late 1800s in Switzerland, simply as a fun activity for vacationers. 2 sleds were tied together so that 4 people could ride together. Okay, so that's where the sled part comes in. But you want to guess where the bob part comes from? Well, that's from the bobbing back and forth technique to make the bobsled go faster. Soon after its invention, bobsledding became a sport. The first official bobsled competition was in 1898 in St. Moritz, Switzerland, and later it became an Olympic sport in 1924 in Chamonix, France. Alrighty, nothing to be scared of, right?
Okay, and I'm way in the back praying. Good. Oh. So when we go on this and we go up, how high up does it go up on the thing?
You saw the corners? No.
Only from the outside. Oh, so it's like this.
You know. And in corner 10, it's a very huge one. You are about half a meter underneath the wood. There are lights and there's the wood.
Okay.
And you are half a meter underneath.
But we don't go over.
No, no.
No, you just go.
You go up and then go.
Awesome.
What's the worst that could happen? Here goes nothing.
Boom! I think, I don't know. I've forgotten my own name. I can't remember the commands in German. All right, deep breaths. Nice knowing you. Bye-bye.
Just listen to the swoosh along the ice. What a rush. This has got to be the most exhilarating history lesson ever. So, from a golden balcony with curious carvings of medieval break dancers and a medieval marriage, or two, to a building that looks as tasty as a wedding cake, to some authentic Innsbruck cuisine housed inside the city's medieval walls, which sits right across from a bridge which gave this town its name, to some curious window decorations that are a proud symbol of Austrian pride, to a fine palace full of fond family memories and some sad ones too, to a castle high up in the mountains, complete with an ornate ceiling that stands up all by itself, and a high-tech hot tub, and a couple of happy peacocks who don't seem to mind the snow. To a funicular of the most curious kind, dotted with giant modern sculptures that seem to magically float above the mountain. To some rocket-shaped sleds invented here in the Alps, which work best if you bob around and you hold on tight.
Good. Bob.
Innsbruck has so much to be curious about.
Thank you for joining us on our educational journey, and hopefully now you're even more curious about the who, what, where, why, when, and hows of curious Innsbruck. As the Austrians say, auf Wiedersehen. Curious Traveler is made possible by the following.
At Regent Seven Seas Cruises, we believe that personal space is essential to the luxury travel experience. With no more than 732 guests, our ships allow you to explore the world and discover the freedom of having space at sea.
Over 300 tours across all 7 continents. Over 40 years of serving travelers. You can experience effortless fun vacations and authentic experiences with Get. GetTours.com.
Windstar Cruises. Intimate, private, yacht-style cruises to the Mediterranean, Caribbean, Tahiti, and more. We look forward to seeing you on board. WindstarCruises.com.
When you travel with us, you are not the typical tourist.
And closed captioning provided by Tap Air Portugal.
Still curious? Go to CuriousTravelerTV.com and follow us on Facebook at Curious Traveler TV, on Twitter at Curious Trav TV, and on Instagram at Curious Traveler TV.